What does it take to survive the claws of an empire? How do you keep your freedom when the world's most brutal regimes are determined to erase you? This is the story of a small nation that stood up to Hitler, to Stalin, and to Putin. A nation that didn't just survive, it won. From the trenches of 1918 to Soviet tanks in Tallinn to the singing revolution that shook the USSR, this is the unbreakable spirit of Estonia. Let's go back to February 24th, 1918. Estonia, ruled for centuries by Germans, Swedes, Russians, finally saw its chance. World War I had shattered empires, and in that chaos, Estonians declared their independence. But freedom comes with a price. The young nation was immediately thrown into the Estonian War of Independence against Bolshevik Russia and German forces. But the Estonians did what they do best. They resisted. Farmers, students, workers picked up rifles and fought for their lives. And by 1920, they had won their war, and the Tartu Peace Treaty with Soviet Russia was signed. Estonia was free. It was recognized internationally. But freedom, as history teaches us, is fragile. In 1939, Stalin and Hitler shook hands. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact carved up Eastern Europe between the Nazis and the Soviets, and Estonia was handed over to Stalin's sphere of influence. The Red Army rolled in, staged sham elections, and declared Estonia a Soviet republic. And just like that, independence was stolen. Then came the terror. Families dragged from their homes, mass arrests, deportations with cattle trains to Siberia. Tens of thousands of Estonians were torn from their homes, labeled as enemies of the people. Then the Germans arrived in 1941. Nazi rule brought its own horrors, including the Holocaust and brutal crackdowns. By 1944, the Soviets were back. Estonia became a battleground once again. As the Red Army advanced, tens of thousands of Estonians fled westward, knowing that Soviet rule meant only two things: death or exile. The USSR reabsorbed Estonia, and the cycle of repression resumed. Stalin was gone, but the iron grip of Moscow remained. Russian settlers were brought to dilute the Estonian population. The Estonian language was suppressed. The people were expected to become good Soviet citizens. The thing is, Estonians don't break easily. Some, like the Forest Brothers, waged guerrilla warfare against Soviet occupiers well into the 1950s. Others resisted through culture, secretly teaching their children Estonian history, keeping national traditions alive, refusing to let their identity be erased as decades passed. But by the late 1980s, cracks were forming in the Soviet Union. The Estonian people sensed it, and they seized the moment. It started with protests, first against Soviet environmental destruction, then against the occupation itself. People began openly defying Soviet rule in ways that would have been unthinkable just years before. And then something extraordinary happened. In 1988, at the Tallinn Song Festival grounds, a massive crowd of Estonians gathered. And they did something illegal. They sang songs that spoke of freedom. Tens of thousands of voices rising together, drowning out decades of oppression. This was the birth of the singing revolution. The movement grew. By 1989, Estonians, along with Latvians and Lithuanians, formed the Baltic Way, a human chain of 2 million people, stretching from Tallinn to Vilnius. A silent, powerful demand for freedom.
Using radio broadcasts to coordinate their chain, people all across the Baltic states formed a line for nearly 400 miles. It stretched from Estonia through Latvia to Lithuania.
The Soviet Union was crumbling, and on August 20th, 1991, Estonia seized its moment. In the chaos of the Soviet collapse, Estonia declared the restoration of its independence.
Lugupeetud Ülemnõukogu, kes on selle poolt, et võtta vastu Eesti Vabariigi Ülemnõukogu otsus Eesti riiklikust iseseisvusest. Palun hääletada.
The Red Army was still there. Tanks rolled through Tallinn as the world watched.
Soviet military reinforcements immediately rushed across the Estonian border to put down any independence-minded resistance.
Would Moscow crush this rebellion as it had in Hungary in 1956 or in Prague in 1968? No, it didn't. The Soviet Union was too weak and the Estonian flag flew high once more. Independence was restored. But freedom is not simply about removing an occupying force, it is also about building something strong enough to last. And Estonia did not waste time. The country moved quickly to integrate with the West, joining NATO and the EU in 2004.
Today we proudly welcome Estonia.
But Moscow didn't forgive them. Putin's Russia continued to spread propaganda, trying to claim that Estonia was never occupied, but legally joined the USSR. Russian state media paints Estonia as an enemy. Cyber attacks, election interference, and military intimidation have become common tactics. But Estonia is no longer the weekend-occupied nation of 1940. It is a modern democracy, a leader in cybersecurity, and a vital member of NATO. Every February 24th, Estonians gather to celebrate not just their independence, but their survival. In recent years, this date acquired a new tragic sentiment with another one of Russia's attempts to bring back its long-gone bloody empire with Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Estonia has just given another military aid package of 20 million, and I also hope that everybody else does the same.
Estonia has been an active and prominent supporter of Ukraine throughout the war, firmly standing on the side of freedom and reminding Russia it is not for you to decide. Estonia's story is one of resilience, of defiance in the face of oppression, and of the unwavering belief that no empire can erase a nation that refuses to be erased.